Way of doing something. There's countless innovations in fly tying, as I'm sure you guys already know. But
so I'm going to be recording these. Hopefully I'll be putting these on the Federation site along with my other videos I've been doing. But the best way, as normal, is to gather around and get as close as you can to see what Brandon's doing here.
all right, so to start off with, I've got a size 14 dry fly hook, or a nymph hook works good too. A lot of times you can see we're gonna be putting this wing on here and standing it up. A nymph hook is sometimes nice to use just because it's a little stouter, so when you pull down on it, you're not bending the hook all over the place. But as you get used to it, you'll be able to do it. It'll still float a nymph hook just fine. But it's a March brown sparkle dun. Like I said, I think it's fun to think about March right now when it's 10 below outside, and fishing big dries will be a fun thing here in a few months. So thread, I've got a 140. This is a woodcock. In this pattern, I really don't think it makes too big of a difference what color the fly is. I'm not ever really a big stickler on the color of your thread. Mostly because if you have a marker, you can use white thread for anything and just mark up the very end if you really want to. But this is a woodcock. It's a good all-around color for everything. Start towards the front of the fly, kind of behind the eye, and you want to go back just a little ways, maybe halfway down the hook shank, and then a few turns back towards the front. Trim off your excess here. Then, I know this seems a little backwards that we're going to start here up towards the front of the fly instead of starting at the back and working our way forward like we normally do. It's just a lot easier to get the proportions right on this fly and to get a slim body or a non-lumpy body if we start here and put the wing in first, because we can kind of build our thread wraps to accommodate a smooth body. So I take a decent amount of hair. And what's really important on the sparkle dun is your hair. Not all hair is created equal. This has very short black tips, and they're hollow all the way to the front. I actually got this hair from Blue Ribbon Flies in West Yellowstone. The creator of this fly his name's Craig Matthews, and he sells this stuff. It actually says sparkle dun here on the deer hair strip. So he selects this hair, cuts it out specifically for this, and I'll show you what I mean by having the right hair. This is just a patch of normal elk hair that you can tell it's very stiff. It's hollow to a point. It's hollow down here, but as you go up further, you can just tell by looking at it, it's solid to the front. What you need out of this hair is to be able to flare it. It's got to be able to flare and stand up, because you can tell in the fly here, you're going to stand that wing up vertical, and then you're going to fan it out. You're not going to be able to accomplish that if the hair is not hollow, because if the hair is not hollow, it's going to end up. It's going to look like this when it comes off the vise in the morning when you go out there back to your vise, thinking how proud you were of these nice sparkle duns you tied in the morning. Because this hair isn't hollow, the hair will be all pushed forward and facing forward. It's not that those flies won't work. It's just that they don't look real pretty, and it's not how they're intended to look. So that's the reasoning for having the right hair. So I've cleaned a bunch. Now we're just going to stack it. And I don't know if you've stacked already or any of that, but pull it out. I've got a decent bunch here, probably a little more than I need. I can get rid of some of this. But you kind of want a bunch that's just going to look good, fanned out, completely flat against when you stand the wing up.
You said deer hair rather than elk hair.
Yeah, this is deer hair. You can use, a good substitute for this is yearling elk. If you can find yearling elk, it's usually hollow right to the tips, and it flares really good. It's got short little black tips. That's what a lot of commercially tied sparkle duns are on, are yearling elk. So, kind of one of the more important things here when you're gonna lash this on is you see how long it took to cut our hair and then to stack it. Our thread is completely stopped, and we have kind of a flat thread. So, meaning it's completely at rest. A flat thread is a weak thread. So if I pull down on this, especially when I'm really trying to suck this deer hair down and get it to flare up, there's a good possibility I'm going to break my thread, especially if I'm using something smaller than a 140 denier, which I'm using. Say you're using a 6/0, something like that. You're going to want to give yourself a little bit of room, and then give her a spin. That's going to help in two ways. It's going to kind of when you spin the thread like that, it makes it a lot stronger than if it were just flat. A flat thread is good for building a smooth body, things like that, but it's not good for strength of it. Another thing it's going to do, it's going to make it easier. We're going to do one loose wrap over this, another wrap, and then we're going to pull down. So it's going to give that thread a little bit of bite, so you're able to really flare that stuff.
I think most people in this class are using the uni thread.
Uni thread?
What is the equivalent of a 140?
Probably a 6/0. About a 6/0, yep. You're close. I would still give it a little spin, only because it's going to give you a little bit of strength. There's nothing more frustrating than breaking your thread. But don't believe anybody if they tell you they never break their thread. I break my thread all the time. Every fly tire does. So you kind of just look on here and you think about what a mayfly, how tall they are. They're pretty big in proportion to their body, so you're going to want a good chunk of hair there. And remember, as you flare it and cinch it down, you might lose a little bit of length. So we're looking at maybe a hook length, maybe a little bit less, but right about there. And then, like I said, one loose wrap just to gather everything, another loose wrap, and then watch how it just flares right up. And that's how you know you have the right hair. You get a great big flare. But most importantly, look down at where that thread is. There's almost no bulk on the hook shank. It's all hollow. It's all compressed. There's no bulk on the hook shank. And see how I've held the butts in my hand. I'm going to give them a couple more wraps just to kind of lock them down to where I can start handling it. I've still got it in my hand. I'll take my scissors and I'll trim that in there as close as I can. And you can see we've got a lot of flare on that wing, but almost no bulk on the hook shank. So we're going to still be able to create a slim body if we want it.
Is that hair spun all the way around the
No,
the shank of the hook?
it's exactly right on top. There is a variation of this called the spun done that you can do that. As far as Craig Matthews' version goes, it's pretty much just like that. It's right on top. Then you take a couple more wraps and kind of lock it in. I like to kind of do one just under there just to lock things in a little bit more. Otherwise, you could get a little play where that hair is going to want to spin. It's on there pretty solid, but really it's a little bit delicate at this point. So right now all we've got is our wing. Because this sparkle done is kind of an emerging pattern. You can put tails out the back, and that's called a comparadun. It's a lot easier and quicker, and I don't know if it really makes a difference whether you put tails on there or just a hunk of, this is like a Z-Lon or a Z yarn. This actually is a UV2 yarn. It's got some UV qualities in it. But you'll see why we put our wing in here first. We do have a nice big bump right here right here about 2/3 of the way up the hook there. By putting this in second, this hunk of yarn, we're able to transition from that bump and kind of make a smooth transition from the body of that fly right into that bump. Tie it down. You're going to want to kind of your ending point to be right above where the barb would be, where that hook really starts to just drop off and bend. Now, how long you leave these tails is kind of up to you. I tend to leave them a little bit longer because you can always trim them up later. Same thing whenever I put flash in a fly. I always put a little more in. I can always take it out later. But about a hook length is normally pretty good. And all this imitates here is just the trailing shuck of an emerging mayfly or the emerging insect. In this case, it's a March brown. So we've got a nice shuck here. This is also really going to aid in our flotation of this fly because this is a real hydrophobic material, meaning it's not going to absorb water on every backcast. It's going to lose water, and it'll also take like a frog's fanny or a aquel or gink really well. So now we've got a nice little slim mayfly body. Now a lot of times if you want to leave this really slim, you can just use a thread body if you want to. If you're using the color of thread that you like, you can wrap that up, use a thread body. For this and for the March brown in particular, they're a pretty robust species. They're kind of fat. They're thick. They're thick bugs. So we're gonna use just a brown. But before we do that, almost got ahead of myself there. We'll work ourselves up towards the top here, and this is really the whole secret to this wing. Get yourself up here right behind this wing, and we're going to want to stand this up. Right now you can see it's moved forward. We're going to kind of do this in segments. So with about this much, we're just going to grab a little bit of this wing, let's say half of it, and wrap one wrap right on it. Next, we'll grab that other half, and we'll wrap right on it.
Right in front of it?
Right in front. So you're going to do it in sections. On a larger one, say you're doing a green drake or something like that, you'll want to do that in thirds, let's say. This one I did in halves because it's a 14, it's still a bit smaller fly. So what that does is it stands half the wing up, and then it'll stand the other half of the wing up, and then you can get out in front of it, kind of like I'm doing here, and just build a nice little dam right there. And don't be afraid about using quite a few thread wraps. You really want to elevate this to where it's going to be sticking straight up. Straight up. So as we get done here, you can kind of see, there it is. It's sticking straight up. There's still some modifications we're going to have to do, and there's going to be some cranky fibers here that are just not going to behave. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of those later. That's what scissors are for, and that's what dubbing's for. We can cover that up with dubbing. Excuse me. So we'll move our thread back to the very back of the hook here, and then just start a nice little dubbing noodle. And we're actually going to use this. In the fly I showed you here, I actually used hare's ear around the wing area, only because it's kind of a spiky dubbing and that kind of imitates the legs. For the sake of this, and if this is the first one you've tied,
Excuse me.
we'll just use all this is super fine brown, and we'll just make sure we have a nice tight little noodle here, and we'll use this for the entire body. Start towards the back, and we'll just work our way up. Like I said, there's going to be some cranky fibers in here that just won't agree with us. Get up towards the wing here, and we're going to figure eight around the wing. We're going to build a nice little, there'll be a little bulb right there to kind of, this is also going to help keep those hair, all these pieces of deer hair sticking straight up. And this figure eight will really help us out here. So we're going to do a turn or two in front of the wing, go back, jump behind the wing, and then we'll finish the fly out here towards the front. I've got a little bit too much dubbing on here, but I'll just keep it going. Like I said, the March Brown version of this fly is pretty forgiving because they are a very, like I said, robust fly. They're kind of a thicker fly. And then once you get up there, we'll just whip finish on the head, piece of cake, and then trim our thread. I've got a little, I sharpened the end of my bobbin here, so it's easy to just, instead of having to pick up your scissors, or if you're not used to tying with your scissors, whip finish, there goes your thread. So right now we pretty much have a finished March Brown sparkle done, and then just get in here, dive right into this, and you really want to just splay these out because you want them to really fan.